Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Rey draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hello and welcome to Return on Lifestyle with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. Today is part 2 of a 2-part series called Don't Scam Yourself in Retirement. Good morning, Rey. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
All right. So this is part 2. And for those that have not heard part 1, can you give us just a slight recap?
Yeah. So what we did was we looked at 4 of the cognitive biases and logical fallacies, which really are just, broken ways of thinking. And the rationale would be, listen, we're always concerned about scams where you get tricked by, fake news, or a Nigerian prince wants to wire you some money over, and we got to be careful.
You know the same Nigerian prince?
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't I? He's my cousin, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
But the real problem is when it comes to retirement is actually not being tricked by others, but being tricked by yourself. We have to be on watch for both. However, I would say that being tricked by yourself through these different biases and fallacies is a little more difficult to detect. And so last week we covered overconfidence bias, confirmation bias, sunken cost fallacy, and recency bias. And today we'll cover some new ones.
All right. That sounds good. And if you had not, or you have not heard the part 1 to this, go back and listen to that, because the things that Rey was discussing, or that we were discussing, were fantastic. And just his thought leadership in this is phenomenal. So go back and listen to that. Rey, where are we starting today?
So today I'd like to cover a few more, and I'm going to pick some of my favorites to talk about. And the reason they're my favorites is because, I come across them as I speak with clients and I speak with prospective clients. It's hard when you meet someone or you're talking to somebody you like and you tell them, hey, you know what? You're wrong. And here's why you're wrong. So I like to talk about these in general so that you can perhaps even identify them in yourself. And then I'll bring them up again as we're talking and say, hey, what this could be. This could be, let's just talk about gambler's fallacy. And let's talk about that one right now.
Gambler's fallacy.
Yeah.
You got to know when to hold it.
That's exactly right. Think of Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers is the visual image I want you to have. So what it is when you, as an investor or as someone who owns an asset, or someone who's trying to make predictions about life, it's when you say to yourself, well, hey, what just happened has to stop happening. The streak must end. It is really the exact opposite of what we covered last week in recency bias, where we think what just happens has to continue. It's where you think it has to stop happening. And a great example of this would be coin toss. So, you got heads, you got tails. Statistically, you're going to have 50-50, right? There's a 50-50 chance that you're going to get heads or you're going to get tails. That's just how the statistics work. However, the mind can fool itself. And the way the mind fools itself is we think, well, if it's been heads 4 times in a row, it's going to have to be what next? Well,
it's due.
Yeah,
it's due, baby.
Yes, it's due. And it's got to be tails, because the streak must end. What just happened is going to stop happening. And so let me give you some examples of how I hear this fallacy come up in conversations with retirees or people who are saving for retirement. One of the ones you may not think of is when we talk about making projections about taxes. And every person I talk to, I ask them, where do you see taxes going in the next decade or in the next generation? And they all say taxes must go up. And I ask, well, why is that? Well, because taxes have been so low for so long. I mean, no one likes paying taxes, but we had the Bush tax cuts. We had the Trump tax cuts. We had the Reagan tax cuts. And so people keep talking about tax cuts. And if we just had a tax cut, what has to happen next is taxes have to go up. And I would hold out to you that we simply don't know. Statistically, going back to the coin toss, taxes can do one of 3 things. Well, actually, they can do a myriad of things. But generally speaking, they're going to go up, they're going to go down, or they're going to go sideways. It's way more complicated than that, but we tend to say to ourselves, we're going to make a prediction. And oftentimes people say the trend must end. We can't keep paying these low taxes, deficit spending. Well, The problem I have with that is we don't know. And so if you are preparing for retirement or if you are in retirement, you have to take measures and you have to make decisions based upon the idea that any one of those three, any one of those two outcomes could happen. So investing in a traditional IRA and investing in a Roth IRA are both good ideas. Why? Because taxes could go up or taxes could go down. Nobody likes to plan for taxes going up, but we have to do that. And that's why we make decisions based upon any of those statistical contingencies. So a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, both are appropriate. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Another way of looking at that too is the market. You know, with a 10-year bull market, roughly 10 years, give or take, depending on who you talk to, everybody I talk with, or many people I talk with, are saying, well, the market must go down. Well, why is that? Well, the streak must end. What just happened has got to stop happening. And so the gambler's fallacy is something you have to watch out. And that's basically where the opposite of recency bias, you take the past and you extrapolate. And in this case, you extrapolate that, hey, I'm going to bet against the trend because it has to end. And that's just a bias. It's a fallacy, and it's not based upon any kind of strategy. Very important to understand.
Yeah, and I understand that. I completely understand the coin toss statistic because I would get sucked into that every time. Oh yeah, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. It's definitely got to be. I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to go with the other one. However, when you're talking about these taxes and you're talking about the market, don't you think it's a kind of a positive thing that people think that way because it's almost like a safe way to think?
So in other words, thinking, hey, the trend has to end, so let's be more conservative, or let's be scared, perhaps.
Well, okay. So there you go. And because when you said it that way, let's be more conservative. That sounds like a positive thing as far as making sure you're safe. But then you backed it up with, let's be scared. Which true, you're right. I mean, because that could also be a fear, that taxes are going to go up. So I guess that wouldn't be a positive thing. But I just think of it as if I'm thinking over the next 10 years that taxes are probably going to go up. So I want to make sure that I'm safe with some extra money to pay those taxes or whatever. That would be a positive thing. But I can totally see where thinking that way with fear might be a really negative thing.
Right. And more importantly, I think, is your rationale for thinking it. If you think it is going to happen because it has to end and we are due, that is not a statistical fact. That is just sort of a hunch.
True.
That's the gambler. Yep. So don't worry so much about the decision you make as why you make it, because at the end of the day, you have to prepare for multiple outcomes. We can't put all our eggs in the basket of, hey, you know what, the stock market's going to crash tomorrow because it's due. Too many people who do that could find themselves missing out on the gains over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that
so in
makes
other words,
sense.
if after 2 or 3 years from 2009 to 2010, they said, hey, we're due, and so in 2012, they've been sitting in cash, what have they missed out on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we have to essentially never be happy because we're always planning for every contingency. And that is why the gambler's fallacy can really wreak havoc with our thoughts and our emotions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So another one that I like to talk about is the endowment effect. The endowment effect. And what that is it is endowing more value to something that you currently have over something similar that you don't already have. Okay. So this may sound kind of weird. Let me tell you the classic story of how this is explained. There was a professor who had a class and a psychology class, and he had a class that same class met on Monday and Wednesday. And then he had another class that met on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they were studying the same subject matter. On the first day of class, he gave the Monday, Wednesday class a mug. It was the college mug. It had the college logo, So he gave it to them as a gift. And about halfway through the semester, he said, all right, everybody, to the Monday, Wednesday class, how much would you pay for that mug that I gave you at the beginning of school? And they all said a number. Let's just say that number was $5. That mug is worth $5. He went to the Tuesday, Thursday class and said, this mug is a really great mug. And I would wonder how much would this class like to pay to purchase this mug? And whereas the Monday, Wednesday class said $5, the Tuesday, Thursday class said, $3.50. I mean, it's just a mug. What's the big deal? Yeah, well, who cares? So what that means is that we as human beings have this weird ability to impart value on things that we own. We create this affinity, this loyalty, perhaps a familiarity to say, hey, because I own it, it's awesome. And because and the thing that's exactly the same or even slightly different, a competitor, if you will, is nowhere near as good because I don't own it. And that it's an interesting thing. Let me give you another example of how this could possibly affect you. It could affect you when you have a sporting event. Okay. And so my football team, all right, is going to go to the Super Bowl. And let's just say my football team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's probably not the case. I was born in Philadelphia. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but that's a bad example because they're actually pretty good. Tampa Bay Buccaneers stink, and they go to the Super Bowl. And of course, it's against the Patriots again because it's always the Patriots. So what ends up happening is I put all my regalia. And then the newscaster comes to my house because there's a big party there. And like, hey, you're a fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to win the football game? Now, what does logic say? Logic says that the Patriots are going to win. They always win. What does my endowment effect? In other words, I own all of this Tampa Bay Buccaneer gear. I am going to start swaying, if you will, towards what I am already invested in.
You're bought in. Yep.
Exactly. I've got that buy-in. So the endowment effect is strange and it happens. And the reason that's important is because oftentimes in retirement, we will have darling assets that we will not part with for really any price, And this is a key thing. And obviously we can talk about investments, but it also is interesting when it comes to things like the home that you own. I find that a lot of folks who are looking at downsizing really come to me and they say, well, my house, it says on, according to my realtor or Zillow.com, it says my house is worth $250, but I know it's worth $350. I kind of have to look at them. And the thought that comes to my mind is endowment effect, and I'm guilty of this too. I have lived in the house that I'm in. I look and see what they say it's worth, but I know the secret. And the secret is that I painted the inside and I fixed that door and I mowed that yard. There is this affinity to what I already own. And it can also happen too to things that are actually on your balance sheet. So when you own an asset or a stock or a bond, you can oftentimes think, hey, you know what? It may be losing money. It may be going down. And Ray, you may say that we need to make some changes to our portfolio, but you know what? Now that I've got it, I really think we should just kind of, be loyal, hang to it. It's mine kind of thing. It sounds weird, but it is part of how we are as humans. And I don't know why we're like this, perhaps because that type of loyalty has always helped us, to take care of what's ours and to it's there's some good qualities here, but it doesn't necessarily work when it comes to retirement decision making. So that's the endowment effect.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, that right there, the endowment effect and your explanation of it was worth the price of admission, because now I can go to my dear wife and let her know that I am suffering from the endowment effect. And that's why my garage looks the way it does, Ray.
Wow. That's a great example of the endowment effect. If I get the idea of what's wrong with your garage? First of all, let me finish that thought.
It's full, but not with cars. It's full of stuff that I will eventually use, because if I had to replace it, it would cost me money, and I'll definitely use that, or I'll definitely use this piece, or we store a lot of items that maybe get used once a year that we don't even really need to use once a year, but we own it, right? And getting rid of things, I'd give a lot of stuff away. However, I still have a full garage.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that's a great example of the endowment effect in real life. And I like that a lot because we moved into our house in 2009. My wife just asked me, actually, when did we move in? 2009. So we're coming up to September on 10 years, and we have boxes that we've never unpacked.
Yes.
Crazy. It's absolutely nuts. But think about that for just a moment. In your life, I have a blog actually on our website, privadawealth.com/blog. Very inventive name, by the way, for our blog. Our website address. And I talk about how the things that you own you. And that's the endowment effect.
Totally.
You think you own this, you think you own that. No, you are paying rent for that stuff in your life. So consider that, boy, this has become philosophical, but it's true. It's true
Very.
about the stuff you have and the assets that you own and imbuing emotional value to stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, perhaps the most powerful one and the one of these biases and logical fallacies is something called the bandwagon effect. Now, this one's pretty easy, but basically, the bandwagon effect, what it is it's making your decision based on the fact that everybody else is doing it. And why is that important? Well, why do you do that? First of all, you do it because perhaps just as social animals, we believe the herd must be right.
Hmm.
So if you're standing in a field and you're a gazelle and everybody starts taking off, you just take off. You don't ask questions. You're like, hey, there must be a lion around that corner. And as humans, when we see somebody doing it, we figure, okay, there must be. If you were to, and this is funny because we make fun of gazelles. If you're sitting there in a mall and all of a sudden everybody runs like crazy out of the Macy's, screaming with their hair on fire, what are you going to do, Eric?
Ray, I would probably hope I have my running shoes on because I'm going to look at the crowd. I'm going to kind of see what's going on, assess the situation very quickly, and then I'm going to probably take off with them. Yeah,
Right.
because I don't know what's coming, and it's either going to be zombie apocalypse, possibly Jurassic Park has overflown, or overgrown, and now there's a T-Rex barreling through Macy's or whatever. But I probably want to go.
Yeah, no need to explain. Get in the van, kind of
Yeah.
situation. And so that's one of the things. The herd must be right. We think that. The other thing is just a need to belong to a group.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when it comes to bandwagon effect, you identify with a certain group of people. So you could do this if you are a Democrat or a Republican. Going back to being a sports fan, you jump on that
Mhm.
bandwagon of your local town because, hey, we won. I'm going to go to the parade, even though I'm really not a Tampa Bay Bucks fan. I'm going to do that because I need to belong to this group.
Mhm.
And then there's a new one, and this one really an important one, and that is the fear of missing out. And the fear of missing out is a whole new, not really new so much, but it's a cognitive
Mhm.
bias or it's a logical fallacy. It is an emotional based thing where we see really a lot with social media because everybody's life looks so fantastic because they put up their highlights. There's this fear of missing out when it comes to the bandwagon effect. We don't want to be the guy who didn't jump on that bandwagon. And
Yeah.
it works. That's why the bandwagon effect, I think it was President Zachary Taylor, hired a guy named Dan Rice, and he would get this bandwagon playing music saying, vote for Zachary Taylor. And it was so effective. I don't remember Zachary Taylor, but that's like the 1800s. That term bandwagon effect is still, or jumping on the bandwagon is
Mhm.
still used. Some examples of the bandwagon effect, for me at least, would be I'd like you to, for those of you who are listening, and you can do this too, Eric, I'd like you to go back to your yearbook and look at your picture. Okay. Take a look
Yeah,
at
that's
your
scary.
year. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, what we used to do, and especially if you go far enough back, probably 7th or 8th grade is where.
Oh, don't bring that up.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
7th or 8th grade is when bandwagon the peer pressure, everybody's doing it, and so I had, and I don't say this I say this because I feel like, I don't want people to feel, you listen to my podcast, you think, "Man, Ray is just so suave, so
Yeah,
debonair."
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Well,
That's what I think.
I had a mullet. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out
Hey,
there. Yeah, I had a mullet.
well, here's the thing, Ray. Um, I'm gonna help you out because I'm in this boat with you, or I'm on this wagon with you, whatever you can call it. I'm just gonna say one word, and we're gonna leave it at that: spandex.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
we can move on, but I actually have something to contribute to this part of the
Sure.
podcast that you are going to absolutely love. I've done a lot of presentations on this, and it's called the Ash conformity experiments. Have you heard of that?
No, tell me more.
Okay, so back in 1962, it was actually Candid Camera. If you remember this old show, Candid Camera did an experiment, and it was based on Ash conformity experiments, where somebody would summon an elevator, and when the elevator showed up, the people inside were facing the back wall.
Oh,
And the person walking in to the elevator would get in, look around. Okay, this is a little odd. This is a little strange. They'd push the button for their floor. And maybe the elevator would stop on another floor and somebody else would get in. But everybody that would get on the elevator, except for the one person, the target, was part of this experiment, was part of this program. and they all would face. And eventually you watch them slowly turn around.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing to watch because it's that exact thing. Number one, maybe there's something back there to see. I don't want to miss out, but most likely it's because I need to belong to a group and I don't want to be the odd one out. I don't want to be perceived as strange or weird or anything else. So it'll be completely natural for me to be in an elevator and face the back wall instead of the door. So look it up. It is amazing to watch, and it really does talk about the human condition and how we feel and how our emotions can really rule over our decision making.
Yeah. Yeah. The herd must be right. I have no idea why people are standing backwards looking at the back of the elevator, but there's got to be a good reason. And I think we can kind of see where this can affect you in retirement, and specifically you can see it at the very extremes when it comes to investing. Because what'll end up happening is we put our logic on hold. We put our strategies on hold. And if the market's going down, we don't ask why. We just know it's going down, and the herd must be right. Or if the market's going up, and perhaps this is even more of a siren song, if the market's going up, or if these initial public offerings, a company comes out and it's the hot newest thing, and it starts, there's been some lately where the companies don't even make any money. They're in tons of debt, but yet they cannot seem to just, do anything. The IPO, the brand new stock that just got listed on a stock exchange, is skyrocketing. And when that type of thing happens, it is oftentimes a very seductive trap, because it's not based upon logic. It's not based upon reason. It's not based upon a strategy. It's based upon the heights of emotion, which are fear, typically, and greed. So fear and greed, when they get to a contagious part of it, a contagious stage, if you will, that's when it gets really dangerous. And I'm not saying necessarily that we know for sure that that's exactly what's happening in any particular phase right now. All I'm saying is that if your primary reason for doing something is because you are following the crowd, then that's the wrong reason. That you got to stop yourself. In fact, with all of these, with all of these things, if a gambler's fallacy leads you to do this or that, or endowment effect leads you to do this or that, that's fine. As long as you can say, hey, you know what? I feel this emotion. I feel this excitement because all of my friends, who I went golfing with, say that they're doing X, Y, Z. Well, that's fine. Acknowledge it. And that's a couple things I want to say. So we've gone over these biases in both part one and now today in part two. I think what you have to realize then is you, when it comes to your decision-making process, all you have to do is stop and ask yourself, let's just face it. Let's just confess it, and say that we're human beings.
Yep.
And if we're human beings, then we're going to be prone to overconfidence. We're going to be prone to sunken costs. Hey, I've been dating this girl for, 3 years. Doesn't make sense to break up now. Those type of thought processes are just being human, and it's okay. And that's one of the reasons why I think having a financial advisor is such a great idea, because you've got somebody who is just one step removed from the emotion. You've got somebody whose job it is to set up systems and procedures to help you not fall into chasing different ideas and different things based upon these 7 or so different types of logical fallacies and biases and broken thinking that can hurt us. And so I want to make sure that you take a look at that idea, and really want to invite everybody out there that if you're looking for a second opinion, if you're looking for somebody to help poke holes in your philosophy or your theory and try to find these logical fallacies and cognitive biases, hey, we're more than happy to help you and have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you don't just work with your clients, you challenge them. That's the beauty of it.
That's important. Absolutely.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Ray. I really appreciate your time. This is fascinating. I love getting into this kind of content with you because I just love to talk to you about it. So this is great. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you, man.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Ray comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Privada Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privada Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Advisory services offered through J.W. Cole Advisors Incorporated. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial Incorporated. Member IFNRA, SIPC. Privada Wealth Management is an unaffiliated entity from J.W. Cole Advisors and J.W. Cole Financial. The opinions expressed by Rey Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.